My closest neighbors when I was a child were Germans. They had escaped Dresden at the end of World War II, 17 years old. I asked them, why didn't the Germans get rid of Hitler, kill him or whatever? And they said, we've been asking ourselves the same thing all our lives. So I've continued all my life to have that in my thoughts. How was that possible? What could they possibly have done differently in Germany? There was a resistance, but it was never strong. And you can see on documentaries that a significant part of the German population were optimistic about the election of Hitler. Of course, Germany was in a very difficult economical situation, and he created a lot of public works. They built the Autobahn system with borrowed money. That put a lot of people at work, but there were those who were worried because of the anti-Semitism, and others said, no, that will probably not happen. He's just talking. It's just to get votes, but that will probably not happen. And then a lot of them ended up in the gas chambers. So a few years ago I started looking at what's happened in Venezuela, which is a country that was seen as a democracy, a new form of socialism. Turns out that was not the case. It was actually a dictatorship that used fake elections to hold on to power. Hugo Chavez was a military coupster who was elected in free and fair elections in 1998. A lot of people warned that if he's elected, the country will turn into a dictatorship.
¿Qué le espera a Venezuela con Chávez?
Una dictadura. Una dictadura de Chávez o una dictadura producida por la llegada de Chávez al poder.
Still they voted for him. And he immediately abandoned the constitution, made a new one. Supreme Court let him do it. And the world kept saying, look, it's a new kind of socialism, it's a democratic country, popular rule. Until eventually, little by little, they started to realize what the Venezuelan people had already known for years. It was a dictatorship camouflaged as a democracy. And now, we've seen here in the United States a clown for a candidate for president, Donald Trump, who has been walking all over democratic norms, who's been flaunting all the norms, who's been throwing out media from his events, who's threatening media, and whose followers are behaving like the Nazis, who actually, he has followers who openly say that they are Nazis and that Trump is their leader, and he's not throwing them in the gutters like he should. And people voted for him. Of course, there is no way that he would have won without a tremendous amount of campaigning help from Russia, with two Russian former Soviet intelligence agencies helping him, the GRU and the KGB, whatever that's called nowadays. So he won with the help of Russia. Let's make that clear. And if he had been a real candidate, he would have gone out and said, I will not accept Russian interference. I demand an investigation, because if he had done that, he would have somehow protected his integrity and his legitimacy as president. But by defending Putin and by denying that this was the case and criticizing the US intelligence agencies and those of other countries too, he has in fact delegitimized his own presidency. So, anyway, but my question was, why did so many of the American people vote for him? Of course, a lot of them voted for him because of the Russian election campaign. People vote for a person they see as strong because they believed he would win. There were many candidates in the Republican primary, and he was the only one who sailed up above the rest. Now we know that the reason for that was the Russian interference. He was their candidate. They helped the worst candidate just to mess, maybe, initially, just to mess with the election. But he accepted that, and he's now hiring people who are close to Putin. So he is anti-democratic, anti-American, and still there are people who are not standing up to stop him in the Republican Party. How's that possible? How is it possible that people like Newt Gingrich are defending Trump? How is it possible that a country like the United States, where freedom and democracy are the core values, still accept a president like Trump, who is illegitimate, who is a quisling for the enemy, who is anti-democratic? How is it possible? Are the politicians really that corrupt? That was a stupid question, wasn't it? Well, if there are any politicians left who are not corrupt and who have enough guts to stand up against the likes of Breitbart News and Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity and the other Nazis, yes, Nazis out there who are threatening them, then stand up and tell the American people what's going on in no uncertain terms. Take the leadership of the fight to defend freedom and democracy in America, because now is the time to do it. Now a word to the people, the regular people. When the leaders do not do their duty to lead, then the people have an absolute right to revolution. If the regime is a tyranny that is not respecting human rights, the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, and a majority of the people are in agreement with that this regime needs to go, then there is a right to revolution. This right includes a right to use military force against the regime. However, I'm not recommending that, because that is, by experience, not the best way to do it. Experience says that the best way to do it is non-violent struggle, like they did in, for instance, the Arab Spring in Tunisia and Egypt, and what they did in the Ukraine. And Ukraine is a parallel case, because Yanukovych was also a person who had been put in the presidency with the help of Russia and with the help of Manafort, the same person who helped Trump win here. So the protests in the Ukraine can be used in this country as a model for how to protest, with mass meetings and ongoing protests until the powers that be, because what happened in the Ukraine was that the parliament, Congress, voted to get rid of the president, and he had to leave. And what has to happen here in this country is that the Congress must stand up against Trump. And the Congress is dominated by the Republicans. And they are too spineless, it seems, to stand up against this Nazism. So the only way to give the Republicans enough of a spine to stand up for freedom and democracy like they should is for the people to protest in the streets. And it should be primarily in Washington.